There is a specific kind of tension that builds when a secret is too heavy for the person carrying it. And I can't help but feel like we have been watching a slow motion car crash with Brook Lynn over these past few weeks. We all knew the hit and run was going to come back to haunt her, but the way it is unraveling right now is beyond anything I anticipated. You look at the setup for Portia's baby shower, the pastel decorations, the delicate finger foods, the forced atmosphere of pure, unadulterated joy, and it is the absolute worst possible environment for someone whose soul is actively tearing itself apart from guilt. The contrast between the celebration of new life and the suffocating weight of a near fatal mistake is almost poetic in its cruelty. I keep coming back to this idea that Brook Lynn never actually stood a chance of keeping this buried. The guilt has been eating her alive from the inside out, manifesting in her nervous glances, her sudden silences, and that haunted look in her eyes that never seems to fade, even when she smiles. It seems that the pressure cooker of that baby shower was precisely the trigger she needed to completely shatter. When you are surrounded by people talking about the future, about innocence, about hope, the darkness of your own actions becomes magnified 1,000 times over. Maybe I'm overthinking this, but I truly believe she didn't walk into that room intending to confess. I think it was a visceral, uncontrollable purge of her conscience. The words probably tumbled out of her mouth before she even realized she was speaking them, driven by a desperate, agonizing need to just breathe again. Like, but the moment that confession hung in the air, the entire trajectory of her life and the lives of everyone in that room shifted permanently. The silence that must have followed her words is something I can almost hear in my own mind, a deafening, suffocating silence where the reality of her crime finally met the unforgiving light of day. And then we have to talk about Chase. Oh, Chase. Something about this doesn't sit right with me. Not because his actions were out of character, but because the emotional mathematics of this situation are just so devastatingly brutal. He is a man defined by his badge, his moral compass, and his unwavering belief in the law. But he is also a man who loves his wife deeply. When that confession dropped, you could almost see his heart breaking into a million irreparable pieces. I might be wrong, but I feel like in that split second, he was desperately searching for a loophole, a way to wake up from this nightmare. But the truth was staring him right in the face. He had to make a choice between his sworn duty and the woman he loves, and he chose the badge. The imagery of a husband pulling out his handcuffs and securing the wrists of his own wife is profoundly traumatic. The cold metal clicking against her skin wasn't just the sound of an arrest, it was the sound of their marriage fracturing, perhaps beyond repair. There's a chance that Chase believed he was doing the right thing, maybe even the only thing that could ultimately save her soul by forcing her to face the consequences of her actions. But if you ask me, that is where the tragic misunderstanding between them solidifies into pure venom. From Brook Lynn's perspective, in her most vulnerable, terrified moment, the man who promised to protect her forever became her executioner. When she was led away, stripped of her dignity, her freedom, and her family, something inside her fundamentally broke. I can't help but feel like the woman who was locked inside that holding cell is not the same woman who will eventually walk out. The psychological damage of being treated like a criminal by the person you sleep next to is a wound that simply does not heal. The isolation of a jail cell has a way of twisting a person's perspective. The silence breeds resentment, and the cold walls echo with every perceived betrayal. We know that either Sonny or Tracy will inevitably swoop in to post bail. They have the resources, the power, and the sheer audacity to pull her out of the immediate physical danger. But what happens when the iron doors open and she steps back into the world? The truth might be more complicated than it looks, but I suspect that the Brook Lynn who emerges will be entirely devoid of the warmth and vulnerability we once loved. The trauma of the arrest, compounded by the profound betrayal she feels from her husband, is the perfect recipe for a villain origin story. When the people you trust most turn against you, the only survival mechanism left is to turn against the world. I keep coming back to this idea that the impending divorce is not just going to be a legal separation, it is going to be a scorched earth campaign. Brook Lynn is not going to quietly sign papers and walk away with a broken heart. No, she is going to weaponize her grief and her anger. She looks at Chase now and sees the ultimate traitor. He is the first target on her list. The battle for custody of little Phoebe is going to be nothing short of a bloodbath. She will use every ounce of her family's ruthless legacy every connection, every dirty trick she learned from Tracy to ensure that Chase loses the one thing he loves more than his badge. What if she genuinely believes she is protecting Phoebe from a man who lacks loyalty? In her twisted new reality, Chase's adherence to the law makes him a cold, unfeeling machine, unworthy of raising a child. She will paint him as a man who would throw his own family to the wolves just to uphold a rigid set of rules. But her rage is a wild, untamed thing, and it seems that it won't just be contained to her estranged husband. This brings us to Portia and Isaiah. Why would she target Portia? It's fascinating, really. Portia represents everything. Brook Lynn just lost respectability, a stable family, a clean conscience, but more directly, Portia stood up for Isaiah. Portia defended the very man whose presence in this entire ordeal has been a thorn in Brook Lynn's side. I might be wrong, but I think Brook Lynn is projecting her own immense self-hatred outward. She cannot bear the full weight of her guilt, so she is systematically distributing the blame to everyone who played a part in the unraveling of her secret. Portia, with her perceived self-righteousness, becomes a symbol of the judgment Brook Lynn feels bearing down on her. Destroying Portia's perfect life might be the only way Brook Lynn can feel a sense of control again. And then there is Isaiah. If you ask me, Isaiah is the ultimate catalyst in Brook Lynn's distorted narrative. Even though her actions were her own, human nature dictates that we look for a scapegoat when the pain of our own choices becomes too agonizing to endure. She views Isaiah as the domino that started this entire catastrophic chain reaction. There's a chance that she is already plotting how to dismantle his life, piece by piece. She wants him to feel the same terrifying lack of control, the same public humiliation, and the same absolute destruction of his future that she is currently experiencing. It is a dark, vindictive mindset, but it makes complete psychological sense for a woman who feels she has been stripped of everything. She will not rest until Isaiah is dragged down into the same suffocating darkness that she is drowning in. What if we are witnessing the birth of Port Charles's next great antagonist? We have seen villains come and go, motivated by greed, by power, or by ancient vendettas. But the most dangerous villains are the ones who are forged in the fires of absolute heartbreak. Brook Lynn knows everyone's secrets. She knows how the town operates. She has the financial backing, the intelligence, and now the ruthless motivation to burn it all down. Something about this doesn't sit right with me, because I find myself almost rooting for her dark turn, even as I recognize how destructive it will be. It is a testament to the tragedy of her character arc. We watched her grow, we watched her love, and now we are watching her harden into something unrecognizable. I can't help but feel like the writers are leaning heavily into the darkest aspects of her formidable family bloodline. We have always known she had a fiery temper and a penchant for manipulation, but it was always tempered by a genuinely good heart. Now, that heart is encased in ice. The way she will look at Chase across a courtroom, the way she will quietly undermine Portia's career or personal life, the way she will orchestrate Isaiah's downfall, it will all be done with a chilling, calculated precision. Maybe I'm overthinking this, but I think the days of the lovable, impulsive Brook Lynn are completely gone. We are entering an era where she is the predator, and anyone who stood against her during her darkest hour is the prey. The truth might be more complicated than it looks, as it always is in this town, but the emotional fallout of this baby shower confession is going to radiate through the canvas for months, maybe years, to come. Will Chase ever forgive himself for putting those cuffs on her, or will the guilt of losing his family destroy him? Will Portia realize the immense danger she has placed herself in by defending Isaiah before it is too late? Will Isaiah see the storm coming before it completely engulfs his entire world? And most importantly, is there any piece of the old Brook Lynn left to save, or has the darkness consumed her entirely? I keep coming back to this idea that some lines, once crossed, can never be uncrossed. The shattered glass of her life cannot be glued back together, so instead, she is going to use the jagged edges to cut anyone who gets too close. It is going to be a devastating, breathtaking ride, and I honestly don't know if any of them will make it out unscathed. What do you guys think? Are we ready for this terrifying new version of a character we thought we knew so well?